Hey, welcome to the Agency Asset Podcast by Unified Growth Partners. I'm your host, Jonathan Ciechanowski, and this is our first episode at introducing our expertise in how to run, navigate, have a successful health insurance agency. Today, I've got Patrick O'Toole and Dan Maltese, the founders of Unified Growth Partners, with us. And we're going to hear from their extensive experience in the industry of why they decided to go off on their own and start an agency, as well as what they have learned and are seeing in the industry today, and how you can potentially navigate the upcoming changes that seem to always catch us, not necessarily by surprise, but it keeps this industry very interesting. But with that, I'm going to pass it over to Patrick O'Toole to do a quick little intro.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. You use the term interesting, and that's been my experience in 30 plus years in this particular space. I started out as a producer, 3 decades ago with Humana, fresh out of the U.S. military, and you know, I I appreciate what agents and the agencies do every day because I spent the first decade of my life as a producer, and fed my family, paid my bills, selling retail insurance. So I have a great appreciation for what these folks do every day. It's you know I always like to refer to this space as a noble purpose because I'm a firm believer in what we do every day really gets at the root of putting people in a better position and really helps people. And hence I use the term kind of noble purpose. I've had the opportunity throughout my 30 years, started as a producer, spent 2 decades at Humana, kind of worked within just about every role within the distribution organization. Humana was a great company, had an opportunity to get a tremendous amount of experience, a lot of cross-functional experience, worked with a lot of great people, worked with a lot, and worked with a lot of great people in the industry. Uh, and had the the blessing of actually running Humana's Marketplace organization, which was their wholly owned subsidiary that was in charge of retail distribution for Humana, the parent company. So that was a great experience. Then kind of went on and saw the industry from the other perspective as a 5 years as a chief growth officer at Health Markets, and really kind of saw not just you know 20 plus years at Humana gave me that payer orientation, but the health market experience really kind of anchored my position, my experience from the agency perspective, really kind to learning to understand about the value creation required to drive efficiency with agents, to make sure that they were happy, that that value creation at the agency level looks a little different than what it does from the payer level. So that was really a unique perspective for me. And then you know before UGP, spent the last couple years in the industry working as a consultant and really working with payers, distribution partners, really focused on some of the opportunities in the space around really driving profitable growth strategies. So, you know, I come into this role at UGP as UGP's co-founder and chief executive, really just excited about deploying, my 3 decades of learnings, because I think there's an enormous amount of opportunity within the space. As you said, interesting, ever evolving. There's a lot of different ways we could describe it, but I just see enormous opportunity, and that's the reason that Dan Maltese and I kind of put this thing together.
Thanks, Patrick. That was a great intro, and really appreciate hearing some of the background that you have to share with us. I'm going to pass it over to Dan to give us a similar background.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. Great to be on with everybody, and always enjoy hearing Pat's story. And if any of you have time to spend with Pat, There's more to learn there all the time. But great to be on here again with everybody. Dan Maltese. I'm the president and chief operating officer of Unified Growth Partners, and been a colleague of Pat's. Worked for Pat for a good number of years. I myself have been in the industry, gosh, about 27 years, since 1998. Kind of dating myself, but that's when I started my sales career as a producer, and it's really started off. My journey was started off in financial services. I was a financial consultant for about 5 years, and guiding individuals and families about their wealth, and enjoyed that. And it's funny, I actually had a few clients at that time that worked for Humana, the organization I wound up joining and was part of for about 20, 22 years. And when I started learning more about the work they did, and the purpose they had doing that work, I really gravitated towards it. And so I left financial services in that capacity and joined that organization. And I really immediately was connected and found a great passion for working really in the senior space. I myself had a parent who was disabled. My father was disabled, and I had a really unique experience growing up of watching him navigate some of the challenges with his own health, and dealing with hospitals and doctors and those sort of things, and really felt like working in that space was a place I needed to be. And so I had a great career at Humana and had a number of different roles. Started as a producer and just over the years moved up the organization, and had some really cool roles and positions. I led strategic alliances for Humana Market Point, working with and for Pat. And any of you who have ever sat in a Walmart as a producer, that was something my team had secured back in, gosh, 2005, where we negotiated with Walmart to put an agent in 3,000 or so stores across the United States. And from that, I wind up starting the external sales channel for Humana Market Point, and from that point moved on to eventually lead field sales before I left in 2023, and always stayed in contact with Patrick, and because we were friends as well. And we got together and really just started comparing notes about our experiences, and together, over 50 years experience in sales and leadership positions, and really started talking about the gaps that we saw in the industry, gaps of partnerships, gaps of quality, and thought that as we spoke longer and longer, thought that we could really step into this space and be a differentiator. And I always prided myself of connecting really people with opportunities. And this looked like the next iteration of a challenge of connecting people, consumers, partnerships in a way that maybe is a little different than what we're experiencing in today's industry. And so here we are today, really excited about UGP and what we bring to bear to both producers and agencies and partnerships, and really looking to share more with our listeners about how we see the industry and how we see the world.
Awesome, Dan. I appreciate that background, and that kind of gets us into what we want to dig into next is to tell us a little bit more about Unified Growth Partners and its mission, vision. Part of the background, and you started to allude on that, Dan, is what made you guys at this point in your careers say, hey, let's go start a new insurance agency, and what's gonna help us differentiate ourselves amongst an industry that has, in many ways is a very mature industry. Uh, I'm going to ask Patrick to kind of kick us off there with his thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. Really, I think it really starts with the consumer. Really, our vision, and really when the industry is working the way it's supposed to be working, everything really starts with the consumer and actually meeting, that consumer where they want and need to be met. So we have a very consumer centric orientation to make sure that everything we do aligns with driving a great outcome for the consumer. Really we view UGP, we really have three kind of pillars that we're trying to support. One being the consumer, two being agents and brokers, and really three being our partners, and our partners may be agencies, it may be the various carriers we represent, but aligning that ecosystem to where we're driving value for all those constituencies. And Dan alluded to this in his comments about some of the gaps or opportunities that exist. Sometimes it seems like there's a inordinate amount of friction points within that system, and ultimately when that occurs, you either have a consumer that's not in the appropriate product or products. They're not as well protected as they should be. In many instances, they're not they're not in a position for success. And we just see that as really the core mission is to make sure the consumer is taken care of, make sure that we at UGP empower agents and agencies with the tools, products, the insights, and the insights are really, really critical. And then take our years of experience within the industry and align those unique partnerships, those under the radar things that are happening that ultimately can drive value for all those constituents. And again, making sure agents have access to those type of things, where because ultimately it's the agents that are navigating the consumer, and ultimately they're the ones that are making the difference for the consumer. So we're really focused on all the things that drive that inherent value through the system.
Yeah, I'll add
Dan,
to that.
anything you want to add in there?
Yeah, I'll add to that as well, Jonathan. And Patrick's spot on. We always put the consumer in the center. That's always a good place to be. And I would call us veterans in this space a little bit, maybe pioneers in some degree, and in all the years that we've been doing this. And we always started off with meeting a consumer where they were comfortable being met. And that meant across the kitchen table, telephonically, in local communities. And we really wanted to make sure that we built an organization that was available to consumers. And from that, you just start developing who you are and how you show up. And it's interesting, as a new organization, as a startup, we've had these conversations as a team as to what do we stand for, what's our mission, what's our vision. And after really a lot of discussion, we really did land on that we wanted to make sure that we did our part to bring the highest quality of life to a consumer. And that takes many different shapes and forms, but ultimately we want to be here to serve. And we want to make sure that the partnerships, the agencies and other strategic relationships have that same mindset, that we want to make sure that ultimately, if we're helping consumers have a high quality of life and doing our part in that ecosystem, then good things happen. And that's really what UGP stands for.
Fantastic.
Yeah. JC, too, just to interject a point, just to kind of reinforce what Dan said there as well, is that, at Unified Growth Partners, we kind of think about, the whole package of solutions. And it really kind of gets back to, I think about a time when I was a producer and the marketplace was a little slower. We didn't have annual election periods. It was way back when there was continuous open enrollment. So, I was trained and I kind of flourished on the concept of needs-based, consultative selling, consultative selling, however you care to phrase it. But and one of the things with the Market Point Agency, which I had the privilege of leading, was we just had that plethora of products. Yeah, sure, it was Humana's uh, uh, medical solutions, but we had best in class, excuse me, long-term care solutions, life insurance solutions, other financial service solutions. So thinking about that consumer and the totality of what is it going to take to me leaving them in a better place, excuse me, and really think about that as an umbrella protection. So not just solving the Medicare Advantage need or the health need, but to understand what else is necessary to protect them, to protect their health, to protect their wealth, and protect their family. So our approach at Unified Growth Partners is to bring all of that to bear, all of those products and solutions and insights and tool sets to make sure that we leave every customer in a better place than when we found them.
From an agent and an agency perspective, where do you see UGP supporting the folks not only in the field but the upline agency owners that are part of UGP's organization?
Go
Yeah,
ahead, Dan.
I'll start off with that, Jonathan. Thank you for that question. And I mean, it really starts off with having that partnership mindset. And one of the things that is a really important differentiator for us is we want to make sure that our agency partners, first and foremost, have a seat at the table. We want to make sure we understand what their imperatives are, what they're trying to accomplish, how they do it, and then really bring that full bear of experiences and tool sets that Patrick spoke about to really co-create and really work on solving problems that they have, understanding where they fit in their communities and where they serve. Where geographies all vary a little bit, and that's always what's fun about what we do is really trying to solve problems that maybe others aren't thinking about. And so whether it's recruiting, whether it's getting in front of more prospects, whether it's understanding how you fit into the VBC world and differentiate there. Those are the conversations that Patrick and myself have with our agency partners, and that just sort of permeates down to the agents as well. We've been sales folks. We know what successful sales look like. We've done that, and it's interesting. There's always new technology. There's always new ways to emerge to get in front of consumers, but ultimately, it's still about building relationships, having your whys, helping people solve their own problems. And we always want to make sure that we're grounded in a lot of the fundamentals that make successful agents and agencies. And those are the things that we bring to the conversations that we have.
Dan, one thing I want to dig in just a little bit on there. You mentioned VBC partners. For those that may not be as deep in the industry, can you give us a little color on what that is and how that is a part of what you see as an industry opportunity?
Yeah, VBC is really around the value-based providers that many of us in the industry work with, and they're throughout the communities, and they're an important part of the ecosystem in this business because they have partnerships with the payers, and those partnerships are really critical because certainly one of the pervasive issues in this industry is how do you continue to drive quality and affordability to the consumer. And so there's really important touch points that exist between payers and providers to make sure that they're like-minded in providing quality interactions with consumers. And so and by making sure that we're doing our part to help agencies and agencies understand the whys behind providers meeting with consumers and doing preventative screenings and really spending quality time with them and how that resonates throughout the industry to drive quality and reduce costs, which can then be reinvested into products and services. Those are the things that Patrick and myself and UGP bring, both with the contacts and relationships we have in that space and just our knowledge of understanding how you participate and how you could contribute to really make this whole industry better.
Awesome.
Sure.
Yeah, Patrick, anything you want to add there?
The only thing I would add to that is it's helping create access and opportunities for our agent and agency partners. With Dan and myself's collective experience, we have a lot of relationships. A lot of times we look at the industry and there's a very kind of a superficial gloss over, and it's about sales and sales volume. But then there's an undercurrent within the space where it's about profitable growth and lifetime value and expense control and wellness initiatives and all these different initiatives that our various partners have. And it's being able to connect the dots and then in collaboration with our agency partners is to give them access to unique opportunities where we can collectively drive kind of value through the ecosystem. Because at the end of the day, it's really about, yes, sales are great, but sales that yield the ideal outcome for all the constituents within the ecosystem, starting with the consumer, that's better.
What you mentioned some of that deeper, metrics or perspective than just making sales. You give us a little bit more background, like why is that important? Why is that something that you're talking about now, and how is UGP uh, leveraging that knowledge in differentiating itself in the marketplace?
Yeah, Jonathan, let me put it to you this way. I'll kind of address this kind of in the context of where we are kind of as a country, as an industry. We're staring down a $37 trillion debt. If you look at the data and the stats, the Medicare trust fund is supposed to go insolvent somewhere around 2036. So those of us that are in this industry today, we kind of see, for the first time in a couple decades, what looks to be a kind of period of headwinds kind of shaping up. So there's some real problems uh, around funding and things of that nature, and those problems actually yield to those that are creatively inspired. They yield opportunities, and it's really having the insights and working with our carrier partners or payer partners, our value-based care partners, those various constituencies within the space to understand, hey, this is how we get this under control. This is how we drive improvement. This is how we drive value, and it's bringing agents and agencies into that solution set. So they're given opportunities to actually help solve these problems. We say at Unified Growth Partners, referring to the Medicare Advantage sphere, if you will, it's about the right member and the right plan with the right provider and the right level of engagement. If we start off the customer acquisition process with those things in mind, it begins the process of hopefully what should be a fruitful journey, starting with the consumer and ultimately, through the entire ecosystem. So those are the kind of things that we're focused on. Yeah, the superficial stuff, the gross numbers, those things are important because obviously this is a business for all of us. But the ability to, in collaboration with people within the space and really get after those things that drive solutions to address those very real world problems and opportunities, really that's what we're all about.
Yeah, I think it's really a key point to, as I'm hearing both you and Dan speak, is that you're looking at the industry in terms of disruption and seeing opportunity. And I think that's a very intriguing point of view, because I think there's a fair amount of folks out there that see disruption occurring and they don't see the opportunity and the change that they're going to have to uh, apply to themselves, to the way that they work to continue to be successful. Can you guys dive into a little bit about, how you think about disruption and some of the opportunities that you think are coming up as a result of that?
Yeah, I'll start with that, and Pat always has a great high level view of drivers of this industry. But clearly, all of us that have been in this business the last couple of years have seen a number of disruptors. There's industry headwinds. We've experienced that this year. Those are likely still not done, and you have to be ready to pivot for that. And one of the things that we talk about at Unified Growth Partners is our ability to be agile, because you format a business plan, you have a strategy, and you've got to really have the flexibility of knowing that things can change. That's exciting about this business, but it's also something that is a real business need to be able to move and pivot. And really just around consumers and distribution, that's all evolving. Consumer preferences are always evolving. We're seeing a consumer today that is much more technologically savvy than they were even 5 years ago. And how do you, as an agency or an agent, position yourself with that? And so those are things you have to think about too. Even in your own sales model, how do you understand top of funnel, and how are you pivoting to be more contemporary about not only getting in front of new consumers, but keeping the consumers that you have. These are the things that UGP is seeking to solve and deploy strategies so that our partners know how to think about their own business in the context of things that are evolving in front of us really on a daily basis.
Yeah,
Patrick, any thoughts there you want to add?
yeah, 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 sure thing. You know, because of our collective experience within the space, we've developed some really refined industry acumen, and really not just in the distribution space, but really how the broader industry actually works. Referring specifically now to healthcare and maybe more succinctly, Medicare Advantage. So, Dan and I and our team, we actually have, uh, you know, a really strong industry acumen, and so we can sit down with a carrier partner and have a dialogue that really gets into, hey, this is how you should be thinking about plan design, or this is a unique opportunity here, or have you thought about this to help drive some, potentially systemic improvement. So having those types of conversations, in essence, kind of like at least a somewhat involved seat at the table where you're collaborating with people that are driving plan design and growth strategies at the carrier level, and to be and the ability to take those insights and then leverage them with your partners, your agency partners and agents, and make them part of the solution set, provide the opportunities where they're kind of in sync with the cutting edge thoughts about how we actually drive the industry forward. That's I mean that's what's I would say certainly unique at Unified Growth Partners and how we're positioned, within the broader space.
As we were prepping for today's episode, one of the things that you had mentioned is kind of consumer demand for transparency. What, can you expand on that a little bit for us? Like what kind of demand are you seeing? What level of transparency do you um, think that UGP can help their consumers see in today's environment?
Yeah, first and foremost, I'll go back to something I said earlier. It's you having the capabilities to meet consumers where they want to be met. And what I mean by that very specifically is that we all have our preferred mechanism that we learn, that we collect information and how that helps us in the decision making process. So, for us having a digital capability, the the very human element of a field agent capability, which really still to this day drives the preponderance of selling and consumer interactions in the space, and that happens both in the in person and of course the telephonic environment. And to be able to even deploy all three of those in kind of an omni-channel sense to make sure the consumer is getting access to information in real time that helps them along that, I'll call it the learn, shop, buy experience, and being really succinct, really transparent in the sense of, we're providing information. We're in essence a navigator, helping them to make the right decision. That is, it's not them as a Medicare beneficiary per se. It's them as an individual consumer with very unique needs that actually happens to be a Medicare beneficiary. And sometime in the haste of you know trying to drive an outcome, we sometimes lose sight of that. And so, our approach is to kind of slow it down, give the consumer the proper mechanism to absorb in that learn, shop, and buy, and help navigate them to the best possible outcome for them. And do that within the context of awareness of all the other drivers that are, occurring in the space. And that's a that's a fairly unique perspective, uh, in the distribution space in terms of how people are looking at things.
Yeah, and you mentioned the learn, shop, buy. With the amount of disruption that's kind of happening, and we've even seen just in this past annual election period, how much focus do you see shifting towards retention efforts, kind of that post-sale engagement portion of a consumer journey?
Right,
Yeah,
Dan.
that's it's critical. You, if you're whether you're an agent or an agency, have seen the impact on your own book of business, and so really the mindset of what maybe used to be of just selling and moving on to the next sale has really now evolved to really from A to Z, that whole consumer journey, and what are the key touch points to really fortify the relationship, help the consumer, make sure they're comfortable. So much has become transactional in this industry over the last couple of years. Data, technology tools, the need to optimize. We believe at Unified Growth Partners, there's elements of that you need to deploy to be market competitive, but you still have to remember that we're dealing with individuals and everybody's different, and really find the points where you could go from transactional to transformational in that experience and that consumer journey. And much of that happens post sale, making sure they're comfortable with their selection, helping them on board with the payers, to get the things that they need to understand, making sure they made their provider appointment, understand the value of mail order pharmacy. I could go on and on, but what used to be this profession of selling, prospecting, and selling is prospecting, selling, and servicing, and you can't lose sight of the servicing end of the industry as well.
But would you say that's kind of the big near-term opportunity for folks is really honing their skills on that servicing side, or do you see other opportunities available today?
Yeah, I see that being business critical. If you're an agent, it's funny. Uh, when I was in a sales role myself, one of the things that was emerging was CRM, and if you're a distributor, CRM, a lot of producers might find it to be an inconvenience and not spend as much time in it. But as a producer and as an agency, you've got to be able to deploy technology that enables you to free up the most important commodity for all of us, and that's time, and engaging in a CRM to optimize how you stay in contact with your book of business, understanding what technology is available, whether it's dynamic texting, outreach capabilities, pop-ups to remind you of your 30, 60, 90-day calls, uh, being personal, having that personalization of understanding when your members have a birthday or anniversary coming up. There's ways to use technology to make sure that you're providing the personal touch, but also optimizing your time so that you can continue to service and grow your business at the same time.
Yeah. And Jonathan, just to point piggyback on Dan's comment too, because I don't want this to be lost on our audience, is that we talk a lot at Unified Growth Partners around the Medicare Advantage business because that's clearly one of our anchor solution sets, and that's really a strong part of our business. But we really believe in the concept, the professional agent concept, and I'm going to explain what I mean by that too. Is that we talk a lot about retention, and retention would be applicable really in any place within the retail insurance space, but it's really critical in the Medicare Advantage space simply because the rapid growth within the space. I think I saw a data point that said that the average Medicare beneficiary has roughly 60 options available to them in their respective zip code. So it's a different industry uh, per se than for example when I was a producer. However, some of the fundamental elements of being a professional agent haven't really changed. Uh, you know, when we sit down with a customer and we facilitate a needs-based, you know, consultative sales process, and we really understand the full scope of what their gaps are, what the opportunities to improve their position, we're talking beyond just the Medicare Advantage product. And so I think when you do that, as we as agents, when we actually, you know, we the, a a consumer can view us as, hey, that's my agent, and that could be maybe transactional. This is a person that helped navigate me through a Medicare Advantage solution, and that's really important. I don't want to downplay that because that's a noble purpose activity, certainly. But when your customer views you as a trusted advisor, they really become a client. So I'll play this out for you. Hey, Jonathan, I got a question about my Medicare Advantage policy, and you know I'm getting ready to hit the donut hole. What does this mean? Okay, that's a real world example. But when your client calls you and says, "Hey, Jonathan, uh, you know, I, uh, uh, you know, I want to make sure that you know my church, my synagogue, my community center, my favorite charity is taken care of after I'm gone. And by the way, I want to gift something to my grandchildren. And by the way, I want to do this or that." They're calling you for a broad scope of advice around, your expertise in that retail insurance and financial service space. When you're touching, a client in all those dimensions, when you've crossed the threshold to go from an agent per se to a trusted advisor, which is also an agent, but that trusted advisor, retention does not become so complicated because that that client is not going to do anything without talking to you first because you have been there for them and helped navigate them through a lot of life's complexities, and and you were there to save the day on a number of occasions. And the yin and the yang of what happens in this space about, hey, the new plan in the area has got a $5 less primary care copayment. You're not so susceptible to those types of things when you cross that trusted advisor threshold. And we're all about trying to engage the agent with the tool set, the opportunity, the training, the level of comfort and expertise to get to that level. And that's really important because it's it's not widely available out there anymore. So it's something that Dan and I are really passionate about. And it really goes back to thinking about solutions for the customer in a multifaceted way. It's not just one thing. We have a lot of ways that we can help. Let's help in all ways that we can.
From an agent and agency perspective, Patrick, you kind of mentioned a few things there around training and helping educate how to reach that level of relationship. What other value do you see for agents and agencies working with UGP and becoming a partner in this agency?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to give you access to the tools, the marketing support, leads, depending on the nature of your relationship with us. But you know, we're going to give you access to insights, training, expertise, uh, sales approaches, how tos, you know, uh, you know, coming into our ecosystem. you know, I just laid out, in my view of the world, the difference between someone who has an insurance license and they're considered an agent to someone who has an insurance license who happens to be an agent who's actually a trusted advisor. So you coming into our ecosystem says, hey, tell me how to get there. Help me get to that place. What does that look like? What do I need to know? What do I need to do? How do I need to position myself? That that's the incremental value that we will provide you. It's kind of a bit of a customized approach to what you as the individual agent or agency need to actually achieve, where you want to go. How do you see your business? How do you want to represent yourself within the space. We'll help you with all that. That's really our focus. It's not just our focus; it's actually our passion because we get excited when the people that we have the opportunity and the privilege to work with really get to be their best self.
I love that. Dan, you gonna try and top that with some commentary?
That's tough to top, and that's it's a beautiful way you said it. And I would add that at Unified Growth Partners, clearly you have Patrick, myself, you, Jonathan, that are part of this team. There's more of us, and so you have a full team of really industry experts that have various backgrounds in this industry that are here to support you as an agent or as an agency, whether it's in the field or operational support. And so, we're really proud of the team that we have and the acumen of our teammates and how they all show up every day, both in their own discipline, but also as a Swiss Army knife, which is largely what happens in a startup mode is everyone sort of steps in and helps where they can. And so you have a great team at UGP behind you that are really industry experts that are here to support you grow your business and do it in a way that's really custom and specific to what you're trying to accomplish.
That's great. I want to shift gears a little bit as we're coming to the end of our episode. We've talked about all this experience that you brought, but I always find it interesting that Unified Growth Partners in and of itself is really just coming up on just a year old, right? Is that right, Patrick and Dan?
Yeah.
And so, we think about startups and we hear a lot about them. I want to hear, what's been your experience launching a startup, right? Is what have you found that has surprised you? What have you seen as challenges that you didn't expect that have caused you to kind of change or react to uh, what you expected to happen versus in reality what did happen?
Yeah, one of the things that maybe a bit of a surprise, but really more refreshing is that, so many people that we've had the opportunity over the, you know, Dan and myself, collective, whatever, 57 years in the space, is that there's so many people out there in the industry that we've crossed paths with. They want to help. They want to, hey, I heard you're doing this. How can we help? How can we partner? So that's really refreshing. Dan and I have always, conducted ourselves with integrity. So I think that's, that's that's super refreshing when people come back to you, man, I heard you started this. How can I help? Or, you got any openings, stuff like that. That's really, that's exciting. And, I love to see that, as far as challenges, I think anyone listening to this podcast would agree our industry is constantly evolving. It is a bit of a shifting sands, really out of necessity for some of the underlying things that I mentioned earlier about the debt and the Medicare trust fund and other factors. But it's Dan mentioned earlier agile. You got to be agile. You have to see opportunity in real time as it's unfolding, and you have to be able to pivot towards that with speed. And that's been difficult, but it's also fun too. I mean, it really is fun. It's certainly not the same old, which is refreshing. But I found it to be somewhere the pleasant balance between super satisfying slash daunting, oftentimes within the same minute, real time.
What's the phrase you use? Something about an alligator and trying to digest an elephant?
Yeah, something like that. Instead of picking a python, it's an elephant in a garden hose.
If you guys don't know Patrick and Dan, the one-liners are in no short supply here at Unified Growth Partners.
Never. Yeah, I'll add to that, Jonathan, from a different perspective. And I mean, coming from a large publicly traded organization to a startup, you take for granted all the little details that you have to really be mindful of in startup mode. And so, the term that we certainly use is we've chopped a lot of wood, and which is probably par for the course in a startup organization. But there's a lot of satisfaction to that, and one of the things that I'll categorize it as refreshing as well. I'm not surprised by it, but I find it refreshing and satisfying is just how the UGP team has come together to really all hands on deck wherever we need to focus our efforts, pivot with agility. Clearly, is a big part of that, and really do it with showing up every day with the right attitude and the right mindset and can do and the winning ways. That's fun building in that aspect. And so it's certainly different from the environment that a lot of us came from. But there's a great satisfaction knowing that you're starting something that can be lasting and that continues to help. Ultimately, that's where we want to be: is continue to help consumers in a way that we think differentiates, and I think that's something that we're really excited to watch unfold as we mature as an organization.
Yeah, Dan, you mentioned, kind of a lesson that you learned is the support system that you kind of have in a large corporate environment versus, well, you're probably looking at the folks here as the support system that you've got at Unified Growth Partners. And do you feel like that's kind of the biggest lesson you have, or is there something else that you've learned along the way here that folks ought to know about when they consider launching a startup?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would suggest that and I'll talk on both sides of my mouth a little bit. That details matter in a startup. You've got to make sure that you're paying attention to some of the core details that get you operational and get you productive. But at the same time, you can't be everywhere at every moment. You've got to make sure that you surround yourself with a team that has the mindset to step in and help where they can. And so, those are the things that you don't know the extent of that until you start experiencing it. And that was a big learning. And back to the elephant comment, you can't eat an elephant in one bite. You've got to take it in small, manageable bites. And for us, we just want to get better every day. And if we show up with that attitude that every day is going to be better than the day before, whether it's how we're interacting with consumers, how we're building our own business processes, how we're optimizing the system, every day you get a little bit better. And over time, it's not any one bite, it's a multitude of bites that gets you to a great spot.
Yeah. Jonathan, you mentioned this, and I'd be remiss if I didn't have a follow-up comment because I'm the master of one-liners, but you know, and you got to listen to the one-liner and you got to try to assess what the underlying meaning is. And one of my favorite ones I remember from my 11 glorious years on active duty in the U.S. Army. I remember one of my first drill sergeants said to me, he goes, "The maximum effective range of an excuse is 0 meters." And the real world application of that is, okay, uh, be accountable, get something done, and accomplish the mission. That I mean, that's what it means. That in Army talk, that's what it means. Uh, you know, Simple one liner gives you a chuckle, but there's something to be learned from that, and it's something that I've actually tried to instill in me all my life. Is that be accountable, do something, accomplish the mission. That's kind of the way I think about this journey thus far with Unified Growth Partners. But nothing easy about it. But it's been fun because we got a great team of people. We know that our mission has noble purpose in bringing solutions not just to consumers, but to actually solve a bit of a deficit that exists within an entire ecosystem that actually has not just ramifications for people, but has ramifications for the country as well. And so, that's when we accomplish this mission, it's going to feel really good.
Excellent. Well, as we come up on closing, I've really appreciated the conversation, the candor, the transparency that you've brought to our conversation. Any closing thoughts that you want to add to us here before we wrap up?
Yeah, I'll start off and then certainly pass it over to Pat. But I enjoyed this. This is our first session doing something like this together. I would anticipate that we'll see many more on a variety of topics. Jonathan, you might touch on that. But I mean, if you're in this industry and you care about helping people, and as Pat likes to say from one of his mentors, doing well by doing good, that's really what UGP is about. And so we always have the lens of what's the right thing to do with the consumer in the center, and we could help you as an organization or an individual build your enterprise or your own individual production with that same baseline. And so, reach out, have a conversation, learn more about our company and what we stand for and how we can help. And ultimately, let's really make a difference. I mean, that's really what we're trying to do. Is we have aspirational goals of making a difference in this industry, not just for the ones, not just by as us as an organization. We're here to hopefully make a difference in the industry, and if we all pull together with that same attitude, we could really make a contribution to doing our part to making what we love in this industry, whether it's healthcare or financial services, financial protection, really be something special. So thank you, Jonathan, for emceeing and keeping us all on track.
Thanks, Dan. Patrick, anything you'd like to add before we close?
Yeah, sure thing. As I alluded to earlier, there are some serious challenges here. Within our sector, really within our country, quite frankly. And if you want to create opportunities for yourself in the spirit of integrity, collaboration, and partnership, give us a call because that's kind of that's been our guiding principles, not just within this company, but within our life. And so, we look forward to the opportunity to speak with folks.
Appreciate that. Hey, for those of you that joined us today, thank you for listening to the initial episode of the Agency Asset Podcast by Unified Growth Partners. I'm your host, Jonathan, and we encourage you to like and click subscribe on the link below. If you want to continue the conversation like Patrick and Dan had about potentially working with us here at Unified Growth Partners, you can follow the links and find us at unifiedgrowthpartners.com, on LinkedIn, and all the fun socials out there. So appreciate the time today and looking forward to seeing everybody at our next episode. Thanks for your time.